So, a quick disclaimer for this video. Usually I like to write long scripts for videos such as these to see everything I want to talk about. However, for this specific video, I decided to just write down some important points I want to talk about so it will be easier for me to talk about them. With that out of the way, welcome to Ultratron. Ultratron was developed by a video game studio called Puppy Games in 2015. It released on multiple gaming devices such as PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox One, PC, and even the Wii U. Now, if you know my channel, you know that I really like Puppy Games and the games they make. There are multiple videos on my channel about their other games, such as Basing Stoke, Revenge of the Titans, and even some on Ultratron itself. I mean, hell, I'm even first place on Revenge of the Titans speedrun. And even though that's because I'm the only one who ever speedrun the entire game, it's still pretty cool achievement. Now, some of you might be worried that due to this fact, this video might be a little bit biased. And to that I say, well, yeah, but that's kinda how argumentative speech works. Anyway, I have two main topics to talk about in this video, that being the pros and cons of Ultratron, and in the conclusion section, we'll talk about if you should or should not buy it. For the pros of Ultratron have three main points: the innovative gameplay, the music, and the sound effects. Let's start with the gameplay. The gameplay of Ultratron is basically a level-based horde shooter. I would even go as far as to say that this is a home-based arcade game, due to it being difficult, unforgivable, and also having the square aspect ratio of most arcade consoles. Now, if you might have noticed in the background footage, the gameplay of Ultratron is very fast. Some of you might be scared off due to this fact and think that the game might be too difficult for you. But don't worry, the first level, or I guess the first floor, which is multiple levels of the game, is a really nice tutorial showing you, the player, most of its basics. Another thing that I really like about Ultratron is the fact that unlike other horde shooter games, in which after defeating a wave, you are given a choice between three random selected buffs, in Ultratron, you yourself choose what you wanna buy inside the in-game shop after every single wave of enemies. Plus, every fifth level of a floor is an assault level, which might be a really nice challenge if you're getting tired of other levels. And speaking of challenges, every few levels, you will be presented with a challenge to either shoot every single spy droid or dodge every single nerf droid. Now, even though this sounds really easy on paper, the challenges can and will kill you. And speaking of death, remember how I mentioned that this game is an arcade game? That wasn't just due to the funny aspect ratio. It was said because this game is honestly kind of a roguelike, or I guess a roguelite, since your progress is saved every 10 levels. But yes, if you die, you'll be sent back all the way back without any of the upgrades you bought, which makes it more fun to see how high you can go and how much can you make your high score in compared to your friends, since this game does have a friend-based and an online-based scoreboard. Moving away from the fast-paced and exhilarating gameplay, we move to even more fast-paced and even more speedy soundtrack. Now, I know that high BPM might not be for everyone, but it fits perfectly with the high speed and intense gameplay. Just here, have a listen. And now for the sound effects. And instead of talking about the arcade-like sound of your weapons, explosions, and stuff like that, I want to focus more on the sound design of enemies. And the reason why that is because the sound design is so good that I can understand when a high target enemy is on my screen, even if I don't see it. Which is really helpful in the hectic battles of Ultratron. I originally planned to let you have a listen and show you how I can see the enemies with my sound, but unfortunately, only after recording I realized that my sound in the game was off. So you'll have to trust me on this without any evidence. Sorry about that. Also, before I forget, this game has co-op. Now, Unfortunately, it only really works if you're playing on console, so PC gamers will have to buy themselves a Logitech controller or just any controller that they can plug into their computer to play in co-op. Unfortunately, sorry about that. But oh well, let's move on to the cons now. And sadly, one of the first cons I have is the first one you'll probably see when you open the game. Now, I don't have footage of it, but if you fresh install the game, one of the first things you'll see when opening it is developers asking you to sign for their newsletter. Now, even though it's harmless, it's still pretty annoying and feels kinda scammy from the developers. However, you can easily just disable that notification and it doesn't really affect the game in any way. The second complaint I have, and it's a pretty big one, it's the fact that some environments really blend in with your character, which may lead to some deaths that the player might think are unfair. And I mean, yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. And my last complaint, and it's probably the biggest one and the one that might turn off the most customers, it's the price of the game. Ultratron on all platforms as of right now is $15. And even though I really, really like the game, I would not recommend you buy it for a whole 15 bucks. However, thankfully, it goes on sale to $6.50 every now and then. But yeah, even a die-hard fan like me wouldn't really recommend to buy it at its full price, at least not as of right now. And now it's time for the conclusion. But I mean, I've already said everything I wanted to say about Ultratron and when you should buy it or if you should buy it or not. So there is not really a point in having the conclusion right now. I'll just quickly say some things I forgot to add before, and that will be the end of the video. The addition of the upgrade shop is really interesting and makes the game a lot more replayable, since it adds some really, really satisfying mechanics. For example, I don't even know if I ever had a more satisfying feeling in any game before than pulling off a really sick bomb fruit, or a really lucky plasma nade clutch. And the other factor I forgot to talk about is that this game has bosses. And even though after floor 4 they start to repeat, they still are very fun to fight against. In the background, you can see me struggling against fighting 3 bosses at once, which is really hectic and really fun. And that's probably it for this video. This is my first ever, I think, long-term review video I've made with my voice, or just at all. And I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to tell me what you think about it, if I should keep making these or if I should stop and you are tired of my ugly, stupid voice. But yep, this is it. Thank you, have a wonderful day, and goodbye.